What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Inside Inter Miami, the Miami Herald show about the Inter Miami Soccer Club and everything going on with it. A little bit of a roller coaster week. We're going to get into that. I'm your host, Andre Fernandez, joined as always by Michelle Kaufman. Uh, Disappointing finish to the Champions Cup for the home side, as they could not this time overcome the cavernous deficit that they were in coming into the second leg. Unfortunately, for them, Vancouver added on to it and ends up moving on to the finals of the Champions Cup, leaving Inter Miami behind. But in the middle there, amid a lot of criticism, they're able to find a way to. They make a few lineup changes and they find a way to bounce back in league play. A much needed victory over the Red Bulls, 4-1 on the weekend. So we're going to go over both games. Look at what Coach Javier Mascherano had to say about both. He was asked some tough questions about kind of the state of the team at this point in the season. And we'll look ahead to another tough game on the road against another upstart team in the MLS, Minnesota United, which is second place right now, standing at second place right now in the Western Conference. So we'll analyze both games and talk a little bit about, can the Big Four lead this team to an MLS championship? They couldn't do it in the Champions Cup. They have not been able to get all the trophies that were pretty much expected from this team to win so far. But can they finish strong? And there's still a few to grab, not just the MLS Cup. There's still a couple to grab down the stretch here coming up. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then specifically on a few key players, including Yannik Bright and how key he's been to this team, the way he's pairing well with Sergio Busquets. We'll look ahead to all of that. But let's start, Michelle, let's talk. Unfortunately, let's start with the bad news first. 5-1 aggregate score. The Whitecaps had their way twice with this team. They lost the second leg after giving up 3 unanswered goals. And the heat was on Mascherano in the middle there, talking about how bad these losses were.
Yes, this was not okay with the fan base. I can tell you now. I know soccer fans, more than other fans, I really feel there's a lot of knee-jerk reaction, a lot of, you see the revolving door of coaches in soccer is
Every
much
level.
more.
Yep.
Let me just say that the Miami Dolphins coach would have been fired, 10 times in the last 4 years already if he were a football FUTBOL coach
Right.
instead of a football NFL coach. So fans are a little bit impatient and do jump on the coach right away and immediately want. There were people on social media already saying that Mascherano should be fired. Mascherano must go. Mascherano is trash. Mascherano stinks. Mascherano is terrible. Mascherano has no experience. This is why they shouldn't have brought him in. I mean, it was harsh. I got to say the criticism, and again, on social media, you're getting the loudest. It's not necessarily maybe the majority point of view, but it's a loud minority point of view. People were not happy with that result. 5-1, to lose 3-1. They were ahead briefly. Briefly. Jordi Alba scored early. It looked like, hey, maybe they're going to come back. They were down 2-0 aggregate after the first leg, and then Jordi scores, and you're like, okay, they've closed the gap to 1. Maybe they're going to do this in the ninth minute. Maybe this is really going to happen. And then, bam, bam, 2 goals over, a 3 minute span or whatever. And all of a sudden, then the hole is way too big to climb out of. They would have had to score 4 goals in the second half. Obviously, didn't happen. Then they added one more by Greg Berhalter's son at the end, and they end up losing 5-1, which was really really disappointing. Obviously to the team, to Mascherano, and to the fan base that once again Inter Miami, with its big stars, with its big, you know, uh, payroll, they still are not bringing home the hardware. Other than supporter shield, very nice last year. They were in first place all season, and at the very beginning, the Leagues Cup when Messi got here. But that was the first Leagues Cup. Did anybody really care that much? No one even knew what it was. Honestly, too much. So this was an opportunity for them to make a statement. Vancouver is very good. Let's not deny anything about Vancouver. Vancouver, after the game against Miami, sat 5 starters in the next game and won 2-1 over Real Salt Lake. So we're talking about a very good team with a coach who's doing an excellent job. And I just want to say really quickly that one of the things their coach talked about after the game was that they felt that they could use their speed against Miami. And that's going to play into what we're going to talk about next. He said, we just kept tell our guys, keep running, because he said they had a couple of guys who stayed up front. They had several players who stayed up high, and we knew they weren't going to drop back. Well, we know who two of those are. You know,
Mm,
Suarez and Messi are not going to be running all the way back deep into defense. So they kept telling their team, just wait. They have a lot of numbers up front because they're trying to score. We're going to be able to go on the counter. And he said, we really felt like we could run with Miami.
right. And the counter's been a problem for them. It's been a problem, not in not just the Vancouver games, but in spots they've had trouble on the counter attack with a lot of teams, like we've mentioned before. So, has someone found the crack in the armor in this team? The fact that the veteran legs are not going to drop back as much and keep up. I mean, is this a weakness that they should be scared of? Because down the road, if they want to win the MLS Cup, Vancouver is a massive obstacle. I mean, there's no
Yeah.
guarantee they'll get there for the West, but right now it's looking like they will.
Yeah. They look really good. And I specifically asked Javier Mascherano after that game, in when we spoke to him a few days later. I talked to him about the lack of team speed, and I said, this keeps coming up. I
Yeah,
said, this keeps coming up, that your team maybe doesn't have the speed necessary to keep up with the top teams in MLS. And I said, how do you feel about that? Do you think it's true, or is that not true? You think your team has the sufficient speed to keep up with the top teams? And he said, it's interesting how he answered. He said, we are not, we are not a team that plays direct the way a lot of MLS teams play. He said, a lot of MLS teams play a direct style, which is long balls and guys racing up and running up to the front and guys, sending long passes. He said, we are a possession team. And it's not just, he said, since I got here, he said, for the last few years, which really means since Messi got here, this is a possession team. This is a team that likes to make small passes. He said, we attack in blocks. We attack with small passes. That's what we do. We have a different style from most MLS teams. So we are not expected to be running up and down the field. That is not our forte. That is not what we do.
yeah,
And that is true. That is true, right? So this is not and it is really pretty to watch. The short passing game, the tiki taka, whatever you want to call it, the short passing game that Barcelona was known for and that the really beautiful teams to watch do is really, really nice to watch. They are in MLS now. And
right.
MLS is a league that is physical and fast. And a lot of these players, for better or for worse, MLS has maybe been criticized that the players are not, you know, technically gifted, but they are strong and they are fast. And, so they may not be the most technically gifted. They may not be able to do the little beautiful, small, gorgeous passing that the Barcelona guys do and that these guys on Inter Miami are doing. But the question is, can that style take you to the top of MLS?
It's a
What do you think?
very,
Can that
it's a,
style take you to the top of MLS? That's the question. That is a
yeah,
style that's fun to watch, no question, and it shows their skill. It
right.
shows their gifted skill that they have on the ball. But can they win MLS with that style?
It's a very interesting topic stylistically, how different it is. And it makes sense because if you look at Inter Miami's roster, it's a much more international roster, as talented as it may be, but they're used to playing that, like you said, in Europe. They're used to playing that on the Argentine national team. It's just different. And that stylistic clash, are they not on the flip side? Can they defend the MLS teams that just come at them from a different from a different attacking shape? That it's starting to show. And not every team in the MLS is built like Vancouver, obviously, but a few at the top that are going to be in their way if they make a run are they're
Yeah,
going to keep
Columbus,
facing this.
you look at Columbus, is, the one that's in their sort of, in the East, that they're going to have
Yeah,
to get by. Columbus is still a really good team with a really good
yeah,
coach, like they always are. And like we always say, they don't have star players. And Miami beat them on the road, yes, 1-0 on a header by Kramashi. I
right.
mean, not exactly,
Nah, right,
not a beautiful, that was not a beautifully set up goal by Messi
right.
and Busquets and Alba and Suarez. That
And
was
yeah,
a header from Wygant to Kramashi, and he heads it in, and
Yeah.
they come out of there with 1-0.
Very easily could have
But
been a draw.
again,
Yeah.
that very easily could have been a draw. They drew with Chicago.
Yeah.
Okay. They drew with Toronto. So,
And with
it's going to be
Columbus,
interesting.
right? And with Columbus, the one point I want to make, I almost feel like Columbus, it's almost getting to the point where it's like it's a mental thing with them. They've come so close to beat them a few times already. Once they break, if and when they break that, how does Inter Miami adjust? Because it almost feels like that's the only thing holding the Crew back from finally, because they've had good performances against Miami. They just haven't been able to get the W, these few times. But once that, you know how that is. That once the team breaks a
Yeah.
mental block, it could swing violently the other way, and all of a sudden, it's in their favor. So
Yeah.
again, a, a,
Yeah.
a
And
a
I
cause for
think,
concern.
yeah. And I do think also that in general, Messi's in his third season now. Messi and Busquets and Alba, they're in their third season now. Suarez is in his second season. When they first got here in 2023, everyone around the league, I think, was just like, OMG,
Yeah,
Lionel
right.
Messi, we're
Hmm.
playing against Lionel Messi, we're playing against the GOAT,
It was
we're
the
playing against Jordi
it was the
Alba, we're
fanboy.
playing against
Oh my
the
God,
fanboy effect.
the
The guys
con.
were asking for his jersey after the game, opposing players, standing in line to get selfies and get his jersey and whatever, and Busquets and Alba. Now it's the third year already, and teams are beating them, and other teams are seeing, oh,
Mhm.
they tied Toronto. Toronto's like a last place team. They tied them. They tied Chicago Fire 0-0. They shut them out. Vancouver beats them 5-1 over 2 games. Don't think that the other teams, they're seeing that. And they're saying, you know what? We're a little used to this already, and they are not invincible. There are ways to stop that beautiful style of play that they play.
Yeah,
And the awe factor, I think, is starting to slip a little bit.
and let's be real. That there's been probably a little, well, not probably, there has been a little bit of that. These guys come in here and the rock stars and they take over the league and all of that. Now that they look vulnerable, there's even more probably of a, yeah, let's beat these guys, who get all the attention and get all the glitz and glam and haven't won beep, you know what I mean, in this league. You know what I mean? Like I'm serious. Like some players
No, no, I know
probably
it's
feel that
fire.
way.
It's motivating. It's absolutely a motivating factor. There is no question.
Yeah.
All these other teams are like, you know, Apple TV just
Hmm.
wants to show them on TV. MLS shows Messi everywhere. He's all over the place. And meanwhile, they're getting beat by other MLS
Right.
teams. And again, Mascherano, so he explained, he had a lot of questions, tough questions. He was asked, like I said, I asked him about the speed. He answered that, well, we don't really rely on speed, And then he said, we do have we do sometimes play direct with Fafa and with Dario Allende, which I asked him, why didn't Fafa play then
Mm.
against Vancouver? And by the way, you saw that Fafa did play then in the next game, and whoa, he scored
He
the
scored.
first goal.
He's been a
We're gonna
factor.
talk about
Yeah,
Fafa.
right.
We're gonna talk about Fafa in a minute. We're gonna give Fafa some love in a minute. But so he was asked about this lack of speed, and then he was asked, "Is the team too Messi dependent?" A reporter asked him, "Is the
Mm.
team too Messi dependent?" And he said, "Listen, every team he's played on for 20 years has been Messi dependent." He said, "It's impossible not to be Messi dependent." He said, "It doesn't matter if it's Barcelona with Pep Guardiola or with Luis Enrique or the Argentine national team or me." He said, "I don't care who the coach is. When Messi is on your team, the team is going to be
You go
Messi
for it.
dependent.
Right.
You've got the
Right.
best player in the world on
Use
your
him.
team. Yes, he's going to be the central focal point of any team that he plays on." So he dismissed that altogether. He's like, there's no way that a team that has the greatest player in the history of the game, potentially is, and a lot of people say for sure or arguably, whatever it is, he's the GOAT. If you have the GOAT on your team is going to be GOAT dependent. Okay, so he blew off that question pretty much, saying, this is to be expected. Um, he was asked about the big four one by one. Do you think that the Busquets is playing as well as he had before? Do you think that Suarez is really in a major funk? Is he as good as he was before? And do you think also that one of the reporters said, it seems like Jordi Alba has just given up his defensive responsibilities, and all he does is run forward and he doesn't defend on the left flank. And so he was asked again, all this, it was like bam, bam, bam. I mean,
Mhm.
he was standing there, and I got to say, Mascherano, Javier Mascherano, I'll give it to him about this. He stood there for about 18, 19 minutes, which is a long time for the morning press conference before training. And
Yeah.
he answered every question calmly and completely. He is very media friendly. I had heard before he came, oh, he'll be good when everything is good, but when the honeymoon is over and things are bad, whatever, watch out. No. So far here, he's been very, very good with answering questions. So I know, the fans out there that want to dump all over him, whatever. I'm telling you that he is taking the criticism pretty well. He's answering the questions calmly and completely. And he said as far as the one by one with the players, he thinks that Busquets is playing better than he had played before. He later added that one of the reasons is that the help that he's getting from Yannik Bright and Redondo, he said, are huge, that he looks much fresher and he looks much more youthful and more energetic. And he said that he even told him that he wants to play more. He wants to play more. And he said last year he was not saying that. There was some question about how much more he could play. And he
Right.
said this year, with having Yannick Bright and Fede Redondo playing alongside him, that he's able to play better. So he had no complaint with Busi at all. He said, in fact, I think Busquets is one of the top few players on our team right now, how he's playing. Jordi Alba, he said, is always a guy who loved to attack more than the defensive side, but he is still committed to defend. He didn't really dispute that one that much. Suarez, he said, this was before the game. Yes, he is in a funk. He needs to score. He's a center forward. He needs to score. And bam, on the next game, he had gone 9 games without a goal. He scored. Messi had gone 4 games without a goal or an assist, and he ended up scoring, which we'll talk about this next game. But anyway, Mascherano did answer a lot of tough questions. Coming into that New York game, it was critical for them to win that New York game because
Yeah.
people were very down, very, very, very down on this team, and they still
Mm,
are probably,
yeah.
but at least they get a little break with beating a team 4-1.
This is a teeny bit of a band-aid, but a much needed one because it puts them a little closer back to the top in the standings, and it just
Oh, I
the
want to say,
victory
yeah,
itself. Just
yeah.
it just yeah.
One more thing I want to throw in that Mascherano said. There was a funny quote, and then we'll go into their stuff. He said, I'm hearing all this criticism and all this. He said, 2 weeks ago, esto era Disney. Esto era Disney. He said, this was Disney World. A few weeks ago, this was Disney World. Everyone was praising us, lathering us with praise and saying how we were better defensively and the team looked so good. And he said, we had gone like 16 games with only one loss, and
Right.
everyone was saying how great it was. And now everyone is saying we're the worst team ever. And he said, I don't go very high. He said, I try to stay steady. He said, I don't get too excited when we're in a winning streak, and I'm not going to get too down by losing 2 games. He said, I have to stay steady, and we need to have perspective. He said, I am not going to make wholesale changes just because we had a couple of goals, just like I was not going to be jumping up and down and doing cartwheels because we had gone 16 games with only one loss. So he said it was Disney World 2 weeks ago, as far as the fans are concerned and the media. Now
Yeah.
everybody hates us and everyone is out for blood. He literally said everyone is out for blood now. Everyone hates us. And it was Disney World a few weeks ago.
Yeah. I mean, he's right about the steady part. You have to be, and you can't overreact completely because, again, you're going to have those crazy, calling for people's heads and all that kind of thing, especially like we talked about, especially in this sport. But can't totally, and I'm sure they're not. I'm sure they're not, even if they're not saying it. I'm sure they're looking at some of the big hierarching issues that this team is having and looking at them in the long-term lens too of what gradually needs to happen. And in the short term, a victory is always a good thing for them. And they got it in dominant fashion, 4-1 over the Red Bulls. They needed those 3 points. They got those 3 points. Fafa played a big role. And Michelle, I know we said we weren't talking to talk a little bit about Fafa and what a unique individual he is, not just on the field as a contributor, but off the field as well. But Javier Mascherano had some good things to say about him too. Let's see what he said, and then we can talk a little bit about Fafa.
La actuación de Fafá, contento por él, ¿no? Porque es un chico que trabaja, que nunca se queja, que siempre está con la mejor voluntad al servicio del equipo y bueno, que tenga su recompensa como la que la ha tenido hoy con un buen rendimiento, con un gol. Sabemos que es un chico que siempre suele tener situaciones de gol.
Yeah, he put Fafa in the starting lineup. He did not play at all against Vancouver, which was criticized. First of all, Fafa came from Vancouver, so he would have had extra motivation to play in that game. Also, he knows those players very well. Now, on the flip side, they know him too. But, everyone expected him to play against Vancouver. And in this last game, he did not play at all. He sat on the bench the entire game. And the team was lacking speed and was lacking some attack. And a lot of people felt that Fafa should have played. And lo and behold, in the next game, Fafa's in the starting lineup in place of Segovia. And Segovia had really slipped, to be honest. He started off very strong in his first 2 games or so, and he had kind of slipped his performance. So Fafa comes in and right away scores the first goal and does a little dance. He did a Haitian dance at the corner flag. He explained later it was a Haitian dance, and it's wonderful to see a local guy. I have to say he went to my high school. He went to Miami Killian High School. Go Cougars. Every time I see him, he says, "Go Cougars," whenever I see Fafa. Uh, anyway, he's a local guy, Haitian American, and the Haitian community is so excited for him. In the press box now, you will see a lot of Haitian media that are coming out now because Fafa's here, and they're asking questions about Fafa in every press conference. And then in the post game, you're going to hear from Fafa in a minute. He speaks 7 languages. He's a really interesting guy. He speaks 7 languages and he's very fluent in Spanish. He's obviously fluent in English. He's fluent in Spanish. He's fluent in Creole. And then he also played in Germany. So he speaks Germany. He was in Italy for a while, speaks Italian. He's a multilingual guy, a team guy, like Javier Mascherano said, will do anything for the team. So let's hear what Fafa had to say here.
Bueno, siempre busco de dar mi máximo. Cuando estoy en la cancha, busco de dar todo para mi equipo, que sea defensivamente, ofensivamente. Obviamente que sean 10 minutos, 90 minutos, voy a dar mi máximo. Y buscar de ayudar a mis compañeros siempre y hacer lo que necesita el profe y eso es lo que intento hacer.
Fafa, you had a goal and an assist today, and you were all over the pitch. A really good game. Do you think you put a little bit of pressure on Mascherano to think of you more of a starter or give you more playing time? Because we've been asking for some subs. People have been saying that he needs to have some more rotations, use some of the bench players. Do you think you made a case for that today?
It's not really my job. My job is just to play. So I just give my max whenever I'm on the field. If it's 10 minutes, I give my max in 10 minutes. If we're down, I try to score to get us up. If I come in and we're winning, I try to hold the lead. If it's 90 minutes, I try to give my everything as well. Whatever the case is, I'm always going to give my best. So whatever's out of my control is out of my control.
Fafa, nous félicitons pour gol aujourd'hui.
Merci,
Et
Pete.
puis, nous avons fait un bel passe-tout. L'équipe a bien besoin de ça. Après 3 défaites affilées, comment on sentit mentalité équipe là après match victoire ça qui est bien aujourd'hui?
Non, évidemment, on est tous contents pour la victoire. Là. Il n'y a pas de temps. Nous avons fait 2-3 matchs que nous n'avons pas gagnés. Mais aujourd'hui, nous avons le maximum là. Surtout dans un moment difficile. Nous avons eu 2-3 moments difficiles dans la première mi-temps. Mais nous étions ensemble. Et puis, heureusement, nous avons marqué 2 goals. Après ça, nous avons marqué 3e, 4e. Là. Mais c'est un match très important pour nous, pour le moral de l'équipe là, et pour le moral en fin de jeu.
Before we
Wow.
start,
Wow.
I
Yeah.
know. Before we start, I want to say that people who are listening aren't getting to see this. If you're watching, though, that translator that we have now, thanks to our producer Pierre, the translated all 3,
In
both
3
translated the 2
subtitles.
non-English ones on that one perfectly. So
Perfect translation, Spanish, and then the Creole, French. Anyone who speaks French could understand that. First of all, shout out to Pierre for these subtitles, which are really helpful for those who are watching on YouTube. For those listening, what Fafa said is, number one, he said, I will give my all for the team, whether it's 10 minutes or 90 minutes. And that's what Javier Mascherano said too about him. He said, I will give anything for the team, whether it's 10 minutes or 90. I'm always going to do whatever's best for the team. Someone asked him, do you think you're putting pressure on Mascherano with your performance? A goal and an assist. Is there pressure on you to start now? And he said, that's not my job. My job is just to play, to give my all. He said, that's not my job. My job is just to play and give my all for the team. And so, obviously read between the lines, whatever. Obviously he would want to start. Any player would want to start. And then the final question was about how important after 3 losses was it for this team to win. And he said it was extremely important. We had some tough moments in the first half. We were able to pull it out and play well. And he said this was very important for the morale of the team. So yeah, Fafa is a guy who can help the team in so many ways on and off the field. He's a fan favorite in every language, and with the media, he's very good with the media. He does community service. He can go into the Haitian community and make an impact. He can go into the Latin community and make an impact. He can go into the Anglo community and make an impact. So he's really been a great signing. He's not young. He's 34 years old. He's another one of these guys in his mid 30s, but he's still in great shape and he's still very hungry, and he's a great asset to the team.
Yeah, it definitely has been. And sneak peek preview, not to give away too much, but if you follow Michelle's work, learn a little more about Fafa Picault pretty soon in the next few days, probably at the MiamiHerald.com. Might be a little treat for you Fafa fans. There's a little teaser for later, in writing,
Yes,
of course, not on the show.
in
But
writing.
yeah.
Yes.
But let's talk about another key player. Oh, before we do that, Messi, maybe he knows, well, I know he knows, but he's still kind of thinking about big picture. And a 4-1 win over the Red Bulls is nice, but not the cure all to everything. He looked a little, maybe like wanted to just get off the field without really celebrating or nothing. I think he sees
Yeah.
that this team
We
has
don't
to
know.
remedy
Yeah.
themselves
There's
little
a
by
lot of
little.
speculation. Yeah, there was a video. What after the game, he was not out there in the middle of the field celebrating. Not that he's ever like hangs out for too long, but he really did seem to be in a hurry to get off the field. Now, it could be that he had to go to the bathroom. It could be that he had to go to the bathroom. Who knows? Why he was rushing off the field pretty quickly. But he didn't look happy. He looked frustrated. Uh he looked frustrated during the game at many points. And after the game, he just walked off the field very briskly. So, of course, people read into that and why he was pissed. He stormed off the field. Um, so, you know, uh, there was questions about why was he so mad? Why was he upset? We haven't had a chance. Well, clearly we can't ask him because we don't speak to him, but
Right.
we can ask Javier Mascherano maybe on Friday when we get to talk to him. He did not look happy. So maybe he's like the fans, maybe they won 4-1, but he was frustrated that he couldn't score more or that the offense isn't working the way he would like it to work. I'm not sure. We'll ask those questions at the end of the week. Or maybe there was just some personal reason that he had to get off the field. We don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. I mean, we're kind of speculating at this point. And again, like you said, like we've known and we've made the reference to it a bunch of times on this show. Wish we could ask him himself, but hey, he's in that bubble and he doesn't talk
We'll
to
have
the
to
media,
speculate.
so we'll have to
That's why the
speculate.
speculation keeps going. Yep.
But we digress, and we go to Yannik Bright,
Yannik Bright.
who we can talk to more often than not, and has been a good key player on this team, and appears to be pairing well with Boosie, which is a good result, good turning point for this team. As we talked a lot about how much of a focal point Boosie is for this team, the combo there seems to be working.
Yeah, as you know, those of you who've been fans of this show and listening to this show or watching for a long time, I think Yannik Bright from last year was a bright spot. I've written about Yannik Bright. Uh, you know, I just think that he has been a great addition to this team starting last year. He came in as a college student. No one ever really expects much from the college kids, and he came in from the University of New Hampshire and before long was a starter. Tata loved him. He is a really good defensive midfielder. So he's what Tata did, but Tata wanted to use Yannick Bright, and so if you remember, what he did is he moved Boosie back to the back line. that wasn't the best use of Boosie. That was a good use of Yannik Bright to get him into the starting lineup. And Tata was so determined to get him into the starting lineup that he sacrificed Busquets in a way, and he moved Busquets to the back line to like a center back so that Yannick Bright could play. What Mascherano is doing now is pairing him with with Busi, and they both play a similar position. However, Yannick Bright is much more physical and runs a lot. In fact, maybe too much. We're going to hear from Mascherano right now in a minute. Maybe he's running too much, but he's very active. He's always running, and he saves them so many times. He cuts off, he steals the ball so many times. And on the counterattack, as we keep mentioning, that is where they're giving up a lot of their goals. It's not that the other teams are setting up beautiful goals with beautiful passing. A lot of it is on the counterattack, and Miami gets caught flat footed and chasing. And Yannick Bright is very good at breaking up the counterattack from the other team, and he pairs up very well with Busquets. So he was asked also, should he be starting? Should he be a full-time starter? And here's what Mascherano had to say about Yannick Bright.
No, la realidad es que empiezo por lo último, ¿no? Yannick es un jugador muy importante en este equipo. Es muy importante, de hecho ya lo vimos la temporada pasada, lo que fue para el equipo. Lamentablemente vemos que le suele costar mucho terminar los partidos. Es algo que estamos trabajando en eso, porque si ves la mayoría de veces que tiene que salir es porque termina físicamente agotado. Claramente también termina agotado porque no para de correr, es un chico que corre mucho, pero bueno, en eso es también donde nosotros tenemos que ir gestionando para evitar que se lastime. Yo entiendo que muchas veces la realidad, tanto él como Fede no son una rueda de auxilio para Busquets. Creo que este año sobre todo se ha visto y es claro eso. Hoy Busquets lo veo yo mucho más fresco que el año pasado porque esas ruedas de auxilios que se desgastan al lado de él dan todo, lo dan todo. Y bueno, en ese equilibrio que tenemos que tener vamos combinando, a veces hay partido para Fede, a veces hay partido para Yannick. Es difícil hablarle al jugador o decirle a un jugador que es importante cuando no suele jugar siempre. Porque los jugadores normalmente creen que son importantes y inician siempre jugando. A mí la experiencia como jugador y la poca experiencia o los pocos años que llevo como entrenador trato siempre de decir que no es a veces la cantidad, sino la calidad de minutos. Y yo sé que Yannick me da calidad de minutos, ya sea 20, 30 o 70 u 80. Es un jugador confiable, es un jugador que vos sabés, como decimos nosotros los argentinos, que nunca te va a dejar a pata. Y esos jugadores los quiero siempre en mi equipo.
Yeah, he praises, heaps praise on Yannick Bright. For those didn't have the beautiful captions, there was one tiny mistake in the caption. He said he has trouble finishing games, not we have trouble finishing games. Anyway, that was the only mistake. But what he said was Yannick is a very important part of this team. And he started last year. He said, look at the performances he had last year. He's a very important part of this team. He said one thing about him is he has trouble finishing games. And he said, because he ends up, most of the games that we take him out is because he's exhausted. And he said, he's exhausted because he runs so much and he covers so much ground. And again, that is why he's so good with Busquets, because Busquets does not cover that much ground. He's just really good at seeing the field and being the quarterback and sending the ball to the right place, but he's not going to be racing all over the place and covering a lot of ground. That's where Yannick Bright helps. He covers a lot of ground. And so anyway, Mascherano said he covers a lot of ground, which makes him exhausted. And he said, but that kind of energy and that kind of covering ground, he as well as Fede Redondo, that has really helped Busquets this year. And Busquets seems much fresher to me this year because of that tireless effort that he's getting from those other two guys. The other two younger guys are really helping him And then he said that, he tries to tell players that you're not only valuable if you start all the time, if you're a regular starter. What matters to me is the quality of minutes, not the quantity of minutes. And he said, and I know that I'm always getting quality from Yannik Bright, whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 70, 80. He is a guy who is never going to let you down. And that's the kind of player that I want on my team.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that Argentine expression before about not letting you down. That's kind of interesting. Something new picked up now. Different slang and different cultures. It's always interesting to see how people refer to stuff. Um, but yeah, let's talk a little bit about the next challenge for this team, and can they sort of carry this positive momentum from the Red Bulls game, because it's another road test and against the Minnesota team that not far behind Vancouver, and also kind of similar to Vancouver, trying to make a name for himself. This is a relatively young franchise in the MLS that is making some noise right now.
They're making some noise, and guess who's on their team now? Julian Gressel. You
Yep.
think he's going to want to play well?
Mm-hmm.
Julian Gressel joined this team last week. You know that he knows everything about this Miami team. I'm sure he's having some meetings with the coaching staff and with the players. So he's a very smart guy who was on this team and knows everything in and out about this team. And he loves to talk. He is not going to be shy about sharing his views. And he's going to be fired up. Believe me, he was not used at all this year by Javier Mascherano, not 1 minute. He is going to be ready to play against Miami. They also have another former player. For those of you longtime fans, for those of you OG fans who were here before Messi, Will Trapp. Will Trapp, who played on the original Miami team way back in 2020. It seems like an eternity ago, even though it was only 5 years ago.
Like BC.
Will Trapp, before Messi, BM, although that sounds weird, BM.
Right.
No,
That's
BM.
weird.
Before Messi was Will Trapp. Will Trapp was a center midfielder, okay? And he is a key player on that Minnesota team. He's really a key player who has tons of MLS experience. And that team, they're coming off a 3-0 win over Austin. They are in second place, like you said, behind Vancouver. They're a very good team. And they went to the Western Conference semifinals last year, and they're improved from last year. So last year they went to the conference semifinals. This year they're improved. They have a very, very good team under Coach Eric Ramsey. And this is a team, this is not going to be easy. And again, it's kind of a longish trip to go to Minnesota, different climate, longer trip to the Midwest. This is not going to be easy. This is not going to be an easy game for them. And they can't lose again. If they go up and lose to Minnesota, the average fans out there around the world who are just tuning in on Apple and don't know that Minnesota United is actually a good team and they're in second place, unless if they're watching this podcast or listening, they will know that Minnesota is a good team. But for the average person out there, they see Lionel Messi and Busquets and Suarez and Alba losing to Minnesota United, and they're going to say, no, that's not acceptable.
Yeah.
Pressure's on.
The pressure's on.
The pressure is on. The pressure's on. The honeymoon is over.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. The honeymoon is over for, everyone is still excited to see Messi, and Messi is still Messi, and everyone still wears the number 10s. And there's always a big circus wherever he goes. But for the real diehard fans of this team, they're ready for this team to start winning and to win some trophies and to get back to first place in the Eastern Conference. They are not going to be satisfied with a mediocre season. That is not going to be acceptable.
Look, this team has an uphill battle in the MLS. Maybe not uphill, but a battle for sure. Because right now, I mean, it's early still, but you look at the standings. Columbus is a factor. Philadelphia is a factor. Cincinnati is a factor. They're 3 points behind. Granted, they have one game in hand because they were busy doing the Champions Cup. But this is going to be all season. This is going to be all season at the top in the Eastern Conference. And if they don't keep up, and they're going to have more of these balancing acts coming up with a competition here, a competition there, plus league play.
They got the Club World Cup is in a month.
Yeah.
The Club World Cup starts in a month from now. Yeah. So they've got that, and then they've got Leagues Cup, and then guys maybe leave for national team and different things. So it's this team has a long season ahead and very, very high expectations, which they should. I mean, this team with the lineup that they have, they should be able to be in first place in the Eastern Conference. However, as we started rounding back to what we started with, they play a different style. They play a different style. And so it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, it's a tough road
And
ahead for this team. And Mascherano, I think he spoke about Mascherano the player as opposed to Mascherano the coach, right? This week, you were saying, Michelle,
yes, he did. Mascherano spoke about, he
how
was
he's
asked,
handling it.
how he's handling it, and he was asked, is Mascherano the player still there? And Mascherano the coach? And he gave a really, really interesting answer. Do we have the clip? I thought we had the clip. Maybe we don't have the clip. Oh no! Well, I'm gonna have to. I
Oh
thought we
well,
had a clip, but we don't have the clip. Okay. Basically, what he said is that Mascherano the player died. Mascherano the player does not exist anymore, and the Mascherano the coach is very different. And he said, I've told all the players that are coming close to the end of their career that oh, we do have it. We do have the clip. Hold
yeah, we
on
do.
just
There you go.
1
Let's go to it.
minute. We have it. It's at the very end of his press conference. This is what he had to say.
No, no, la verdad que no. De hecho, no extraño nada jugar. No, no extraño nada jugar. Entendí y fue un proceso, inclusive antes de tomar la decisión de retirarme, de que el jugador en algún momento iba a morir. Y la verdad que eso lo tengo bastante aceptado, más allá de que, como le digo, sobre todo a chicos que están viviendo su última etapa como futbolistas, no hay nada como ser futbolista. No se asemeja, por más que estés en el banco y estés al lado. No hay nada, porque al final, cuando sos futbolista, la pelota la tenés vos y las decisiones las tomás vos. Cuando sos entrenador, sugerís, tratás de convencer, pero ya las decisiones, la pelota ya no la tenés más vos. Así que no queda nada. A ver, siempre he tratado de, como futbolista y ahora como entrenador, tratar de priorizar lo colectivo por lo individual, tratar de ayudar desde donde aportaba, donde podía, como jugador claramente, y entiendo que el jugador tiene mucho más ascendencia sobre un compañero que el entrenador sobre un jugador. Mirá lo que te voy a decir. Un compañero te puede convencer mucho más que un entrenador. Y como entrenador, siempre creo que aprendemos mucho más nosotros los entrenadores de los jugadores de lo que le podemos enseñar nosotros los entrenadores a los jugadores. Porque al final los jugadores día a día te van demostrando por dónde hay que ir. Muchas veces, y es ahí donde un entrenador no tiene que estar cerrado y tiene que estar abierto o por lo menos de mi manera. Yo no entiendo el fútbol diciendo esto se hace de esta manera. Porque al final, ¿de qué sirve que yo crea una cosa si los jugadores realmente creen otra? Y es ahí en el debate que no creo que ahí eso me haga perder a mí ni autoridad ni otra cosa, sino en el debate está el crecimiento, en eso de, proponer cosas. Claramente después las decisiones las toma uno, para eso estoy acá, ¿no? Pero siempre pensando en lo colectivo y siempre tratando de construir, nada más.
Okay, it's so much better in his words.
Yeah.
So much better in his words. He really is he's a good interview. What he said basically again is that I don't have any regrets. I don't miss playing. He said, I knew it was a process, but the player had to die. I knew it before I retired that, that was it. I was done as a player. And he's told the players that are reaching retirement age, which is a lot of guys on this team, by the way, that there's nothing like playing, that it will never be the same again. And he said it's not the same sitting on the bench, even as a coach. He said, because at the end of the day, the ball is not at your feet. You are not the one making the decisions with the ball, the players are. And he said, you can make suggestions, you can propose things, you can try to, whatever. But he said, at the end of the day, it's the players who have the power in this game. And he said, and the players also have more influence on each other than a coach has. And he said, the players can convince each other of things and influence each other more than a coach can influence a player. And he said he knows that from his own experience, and he's now been on both sides. And he said basically what he does as a coach is he thinks you have to be open minded, because he said, you as a coach can think one thing, but what good is that if the players think something else and don't agree with what you're suggesting? So he said he thinks that the give and take, between the coach and the players is where the growth of the team is, where you propose something. And yes, at the end, you are the one who makes the final decision as the coach, but the players' input is very important, because A, the ball is at their feet, and B, they influence each other more than you can influence them. So I thought it was a really interesting, I chose to use this clip because I thought this was some real insight into Mascherano, the coach.
Yeah. It's interesting because it shows you how sometimes the blame is a little bit justified, but sometimes you do what you put the best plan in place and the players have to go out and execute it. And it sounds cliche, but it's true. I mean, they're the ones on the field and they have to get everything, done the right way. And even then, stuff
And
happens.
even then, sometimes they don't agree with what the coach's plan is, too.
Right.
So
Right.
what if he puts a plan in place and Messi doesn't like it, even though they're friends from a long time?
Yeah.
But, Messi's the player. Mascherano's now the coach. What if Mascherano says we want to do this and the players don't like it and they go out there and they're grumpy and they play grumpy, because they don't like the plan. They don't like the game plan, or they see something else on the field and they disagree with what the game plan is. This goes on with any team in any sport. The coaches sit and spend all week, breaking down the video of the other team and putting together a game plan. But then it's up to the players to execute the game plan. And if they don't believe in the game plan, that's difficult. So there's a lot of give and take between coaches and players. And in this case, you've got a coach who's 40 years old. He's very young, and he was their teammate. So it would be interesting to be a fly on the wall in some of those conversations.
Yeah, and that dynamic itself, the fact that he was a teammate for all of them, we know is a interesting dynamic to begin with. So that give and take also creates some familiarity, but maybe also some interesting back and forth too. I'm sure behind the scenes when they, in terms of preparation and in game, all of that. So.
Right.
But it's been a long season, and it's going to be a long season, and it's been a long episode. So we're going to wrap it up right here.
We're going to wrap it up.
Yeah, we've talked about Minnesota, and we, let's see what happens on Saturday. We'll be back next week to talk about that and look ahead to. They'll have a midweek game next week on the road, I believe, against San Jose.
Bruce Arena.
Against Bruce
Arena.
Yep, those
we're not going to get into it yet, but
yeah, but we'll talk about.
That's going to be another big game.
Preview
that's
for
going to be on
the next
Wednesday.
One. We'll recap what
That'll
happened in Minnesota, and then what may happen at San Jose. But until then, thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed the translations and everything else on this episode. If you're watching on YouTube or at MiamiHerald.com. For those of you listening, we thank you as well for listening on all your favorite podcatchers. And we hope you continue to tune in to Inside Inter Miami. Until next week, for Michelle Kaufman, the Pistolero, and everybody else, I'm Andre Fernandez. We'll talk to you next week.